Hey. So, I'm coming back today, and if anybody was here yesterday, then they know that I've basically failed in setting up the cluster. But since I've figured out what was wrong, I wanted to just come ASAP and, uh, follow the tutorial and show what was wrong and that it actually works. So just to start, what I'm doing today is I'm following the OpenSuse Rancher Radio tutorials, and from what I gather, it's basically a set of tutorials they do in different languages and in different, different times of years or different events. So the one that's linked in the description is in Polish, but I'm pretty sure if you Google or search on YouTube for Rancher Radio, you'll find one that's basically the same and it's in your language. One other thing is that the prerequisites. So maybe first thing, what was wrong yesterday? So yesterday I was trying to follow this tutorial on Rocky Linux version 9, and from what I gather, it was basically something on the Rocky Linux side that it didn't work after everything worked up to installing Rancher, and whenever I installed Rancher, I couldn't get to the Rancher login page. And as soon as I switched to the Ubuntu server as my main OS for the installation, everything just started working. So just a heads up. One other thing before we start. There are some prerequisites if you actually want to just try it, other than setting up virtual machines. You should be able to at least set some sort of fully qualified domain name for the Rancher, basically for the Rancher VM or for the Rancher as a service. I'm saying FQDN, but basically you have to call the Rancher web UI by the host name or by the FQDN you will give it. So you can just modify your etc hosts if you're on Linux or hosts if you're on Windows also. But for me, I have a domain name that I've just prepared for today. Having said that, maybe I will give a quick sketch of what I'm actually trying to do and what you actually need. So what we actually need are two VMs. So we can call this VM1, and here we can do VM2. And VM1 will be our Rancher VM, and it will host a separate Kubernetes cluster called RKA2, which is type of K3s, but it is just a spin on that, and it will only host Rancher. And we will also need another VM basically for our K3s worker node, or for our K3s cluster. So just for this example, it will be one node cluster, but I will show you how easily you can just multiply this if you have more VMs or you want to make more of those. But yeah, and maybe one other thing why I'm doing this at all. I've noticed that my tutorials, they are not or maybe the VODs of the streams, maybe are not super popular, but at least they are more popular than some official materials that SUSE is releasing, the live stream recordings of those workshops. That I'm basically basing this what I'm doing today on. And I think that if it has more reach, then it's only all the better. Also, one other thing, that those two VMs should be basically reachable. It's best if there are, if possible, if they are in the same VLAN. Then it's the least hiccups you can have. But basically, they should be fully reachable in between themselves. And maybe one other thing, if you are like, trying this, what I'm doing like multiple times in a day, or, multiple times in an hour, and for some reason you're failing and you want to like, restart again and again and again, you might hit a limit on the container images you can pull within an hour. So if you are doing like quite a lot of those, or you are like, hitting the container repositories a lot from a single IP, you might get, time off. So that's just to have in mind before we start. Do I also need to say anything else? Do we require anything else? I think this is like basically a pretty straightforward drawing, and I think that is enough. And like I said, FQDN. Oh my god, I can't even write FQDN for the Rancher. If you do it within etc host and whatever, but just have one prepared. Okay, so there are like, this workshop is recorded on YouTube. If you are Polish, then you can like just go and click the link. If you're not, then like I said, Google Rancher audio, and you'll probably find anything that's in English. But yeah, having said that, I will also mix things up a little. So those tutorials don't really tell you to do that, but what I will do is I will create a dedicated user called Rancher for this. So first, I am on my Rancher test, my VM that's meant for Rancher, and oh yeah, that's one thing I forgot. It only has two cores, but it has 8 gigs of RAM. I'm pretty sure you can manage with like 4 gigs or even less. That's a strange notification I have on my phone. Oh, whatever. That should be enough. And like I said, we need to create dedicated Rancher user. So I never remember if it's user add or add user. User add is low level. Okay, so it's add user, and we'll call that user Rancher. And I will not give him a password, because I don't really want him to have a password, because it's not required. He will not be like a user that you can log on to. But one little thing we have to do is we have to make him, we basically have to add him to the sudo group. And since he has no password, then I will basically not really add him to the sudo group. I will just make an exception for that user within the sudo. So I will go to the etc sudo errors.d, and I'll create, let's say, 88 Rancher. And yesterday I also like wasted some time, because I added like .config at the end of this file, and then basically the sudo ignored anything that had a dot in it. So just don't add .config to this file. Okay, so for user Rancher, we want everything to be no password. If you're not sure about this syntax, just Google passwordless sudo, and basically first answer on the Stack Overflow should, I think, will explain it to you. Or just read the man. Anyway, so to test that, we will become the Rancher, and we will try to become root again, and we are root without being asked for password. Okay, so now that we have our dedicated user, and we have sudo access, we can start like provisioning our cluster, our Rancher cluster. So usually I would watch the YouTube tutorial, but I have like not to waste time. I have went beforehand and written down the instructions that in those Rancher videos are basically displayed on this side. If we skip a bit further, you basically have a full description right here, and you can check everything. So I basically went and just written those down so I can just copy and paste. Okay. So the first thing we have to do is to install the RK2. And like I said, the RK2 is like the SUSE or Rancher version of K3s. So we'll do just that. And also one thing I've also forgotten to mention. Notice that everywhere I think almost everywhere I'm specifying a version. Like for the RK2, I'm specifying the version 1.24. I will also specify the version of the Rancher itself. And that is because Rancher is like certain versions of Rancher are meant to work only with certain versions of Kubernetes, right? So if you want to use different versions, or if you're like watching this tutorial like in a year time, you might want to check the compatibility matrix. Like what version do you need to manage your Kubernetes cluster? Like what version of Rancher do you need? Okay, so we have that installed. And the next step would be to create our etc Rancher RK2. And what is interesting is that on Ubuntu you have to execute this command, and on Rocky Linux it basically was created for us beforehand. Weird, but still. And other thing we have to do is that we need to create a config YAML file within that directory we just created with the echo write kubeconfig mode 0644. And I think it needs, yep, it's need to close the quote. Okay, after that we can enable and start our RKA server, our RKA cluster. So for that, we have to enable the service so it auto starts after each reboot. And if we add -- now, then we basically tell it to start right now. So it should take no more than a minute, possibly depending on what hardware you are running this on. But after it's done, we should have bare bones working RKA cluster. And also, while it's being like executed, I just might add that, whenever I first heard of Kubernetes, I really wanted to set it up from scratch by hand manually. And, setting Kubernetes up is nothing like setting up a Docker or anything else like that, because you basically install Docker and you're pretty much good to go. With Kubernetes, you need to install not only the container engine, you basically have to install the network backend. You need to install the ingress, which is basically like how your container flotilla is like interacting with the internet, like how it's accepting traffic, stuff like that. And if you do not want to do that all by hand, you can just go for a cookie cutter ready solution, which is basically either K8s or K3s. So if you install those, you have Kubernetes cluster that is pretty much ready to go, with some choices being made for you beforehand, but those are not necessarily bad choices. And I'm just saying that if this is like your first tutorial you're seeing and you're wondering what's the big deal with Kubernetes, K3s and K8s. Well, anyway, our server is running. We can also check this with sudo journalctl fu RKA2 server. And we can see that it basically has done some things. We can also check what sort of ports we have listening. As you can see, So some new things have appeared like etcd, Calico node, kube proxy, kubelet, containerd, stuff like that. Okay, so now that we have it, we need to install the kubectl, and kubectl is a tool that will allow us to basically interact and manage our cluster at the CLI level. So I will clear the screen and we will download the latest stable release. And I mean, this is like something that this command is something that I took from the materials. Oh, could not resolve host DL8s IO. So I've quite possibly made a typo. Oh yes, I know. Yes, I see. So here it should be slash instead of a dot once more. And as you can see, it's quite crazy because, you know, we are telling curl to download something, and within that URL we are constructing, we are telling curl to tell us what's the latest release, latest stable release based on some txt file. Crazy, I know. But we should have that file right now. After we have it, we can install it with the install command. And what install command does, it's basically copying this file to this location and assigning it those attributes. So it's basically doing chown and change mod for us. Okay, after it's like within our path, we need to still create .cube directory within our home, and then we need to copy the RK2 YAML file to our directory and call it as config. So we'll do just that. And we also need to change the ownership because I think it has by default root ownership. So we are like changing the owner and group. And just to verify that everything works and that the kubectl can connect to our RK2 cluster, we are telling the kubectl to get nodes. And you can see that we have our node ready, what version is this, and what roles does this node have. So everything works now without any problems. The next step is to install Helm, and Helm is something like apt or yum or DNF, like packet manager, but for Kubernetes, right? So we will grab the get helm sh from the git.io. We'll change it so that it's executable. And before we execute it, the good practices is to actually check what's within the shell file. Like, is it like actually the shell we want? Like, doesn't it have any weird things? And obviously, if it's like, 200 or 500 or more hundreds of lines, then I'm not really expecting you to, reading this and understanding everything. But, just give it a glance if you cannot like, do it 100%. Okay. By the way, I think I've done something I didn't want to, but it still got me where I wanted to be. So we will execute the get helm command, and it will download the helm release and install it for us. And we should be fine, even though it says helm in it to configure helm, because now we should be able to add our repository. Oh, sorry. So we actually have to helm in it. Yep. Okay, sorry. So after we've initialized our helm, we can add the Jetstack repo. And with adding the Jetstack repo, we are proceeding to the next step, which is configuring and installing the certificate manager. So I probably should have said it before we added this repository, but you can easily delete it if you want to. The cert manager is responsible for certificate deployment for our Rancher installation. So the only case where you do not want the cert manager is if you have your very own certificate files, like signed certificates, right? Or or whatever, or your own private CA rolled out certificates that you trust. So if you have those, then you do not need the cert manager, even though I am not basically covering this method. I will mention what you need to do in order to roll out your own certificates, but I'm just saying that so that you are aware. But the cert manager will give you two options when you are installing Rancher, and that is it will either grab you a certificate from Let's Encrypt, and I basically haven't ever tested that. Or if you will just go with the default options, then it will basically create an untrusted self-signed certificate that you'll have the browser warn you about, which isn't a big deal if you are like doing this for learning or testing purposes. Okay, so we have added the Jetstack.io and the Jetstack repository, and now we can install Cert Manager. And just like I said before, take notice that this also have a certain version specified, because all in all, it's like pretty much everything is meant to work with each other only on specific versions, like in this case it's 1.11.0, right? I think you should be alright if you will like go with a higher version than 0, but you should probably stick to the 1.11 branch. No, another typo. Create. Helm install. Unknown flag create namespace. Have I like made a typo previously? Oh. No. Give me a second. Have I made a typo or... Or maybe I've messed up, or maybe I've somehow messed up installing Helm. Should be alright. Okay, so maybe let me try doing this by hand. Helm install. And I will just reference my source document for that. Helm install, cert manager, jet stack, cert manager, namespace, cert manager, version. This set installs CRDs true. And create namespace. Unknown flag create namespace. Is it possible that I have installed a wrong version of Helm? I think it is Helm version client. Yes. So I think this is version 2 and we need version 3. So what will, so okay, so I think it can be done with just with doing it like this, like the method that is mentioned in the Rancher Rodeo, because I was thinking that I will be smart and do it another way, and it worked previously and now it backfired. So GitHub user content.com/helm/master scripts get helm free pipe bash. Okay, so 404. I must have made a typo. GitHub row GitHub user content GitHub user content.com/helm/master. Oh yes, I think, yeah, it's scripts pipe bash. Yes, exactly. So we're having like version v2 and we need version v3. So this is probably why I got confused with the initialization. So now Helm version client is a proper one. So now that I will just scroll back to our cert manager installation and hit enter. And here I didn't have this. Oh yes, so I basically I've added the version for the old. So basically, once again, I'm once again adding the repository and I am executing the command. I will fix this after it's done. After it's done doing what it's doing now. But basically now we are deploying the cert manager as we were supposed to initially. Have in mind that even if it gives you a big hooray, it might still be doing things underneath the hood. So give it a minute. You can check it with a rollout command or basically a rollout sub command. But before I do that, let me just change the mod of that config file to the 0600 for the .cube config. Great, and now Helm should no longer give us a client. Should give us a warning about the file being insecure and group readable. Okay. Do I have the... Yes, I do have the check command for the rollout. So if you are wondering if the cert manager is done being deployed, you can use the kubectl -n cert manager, which is the namespace we have chosen. Then we go rollout status and deploy cert manager. And if we go that, we can see that it is being successfully rolled out. Okay, so now we have cert manager done and we can proceed to installing the Rancher. So we will just add the Rancher latest repo, which is actually the stable one, if I'm not mistaken. You can read that. You can read more on that on their website. But if we have that, we can just add the repository and we can tell Helm to install and deploy our Rancher. So what's happening here? We are choosing the namespace. We are setting the host name. So this is why I mentioned at the beginning that you need to prepare some sort of FQDN. This is mine. and it's referring to the private IP addressation, so don't bother knocking on that door. We are setting the replicas. You can set more, but I think that for now one is enough. If you want, you can also expand your Rancher cluster to have more nodes and basically be high availability. But for the purposes of this example, I just skip it, and if I don't forget, I will show you how to add more nodes to that cluster. We also specify the version we want to use, and then we tell it to create the namespace for us so that we do not have to create it manually. So I hit enter, and it should be done within no more than 5 minutes, I think. And just that. And we also can, yep, so it's not done yet. So we basically cannot execute this command that basically gives us our setup password, but we should be able to do that in a second. And after it's done, the rest of the commands should, the rest of the things we want to do on the cluster should be doable from the web UI. I'm pretty sure you can also check the rollout on the Rancher on the cattle system, but we might just also get kubectl to show us the old pods. And we can see that we still have stuff running. I was kind of expecting to oh yeah, so we only have one cattle system. So I think we should have at least two, like the Rancher and the webhook one. And it's also not ready. So we can also check it this way. And since it's like switched from 0 to 1, it should be ready, and it kinda is, because it's giving me the secret required for finishing our setup work. So I will go to my browser and go to that URL. Let me switch to the view so you can see better. And yeah, like I said, it's giving me this is not like secure, like it doesn't know the certificate. And if you wanted to deploy your own SSL certificate, you need to add arguments to the Helm install Rancher. And the Rancher has this pretty well documented on their website. So if you want to deploy your own SSL, you have your own SSL certificate, you can point to it here. Since we haven't done that and we are basically going with the default option, then the Helm and the Rancher assume that you want to use Cert Manager and you want to just have it generate some default certificate and roll with that. So that certificate, if you want to, then you can, like, you know, check the certificate details, but for now it's whatever. And it works. And yesterday, when I was doing the exact same steps on the Rocky Linux, we had basically a big 502 server error, even though I've disabled the SAL and other stuff like that. Why it didn't work, it's a mystery for me. But it works now. So what I will do now is I will copy this new password. Like, one note to have in mind is that it requires at least 12 characters. So I'll just go for this one that is being generated for me. I specified the server URL, and we've basically also done that within the hosts. So I can leave it with that. I don't really want any anonymous statistics, but I need to accept the terms of use and service. And after that, I click continue. And we have our Rancher set up and ready to go. So at this point, you are pretty much well off as it comes to Rancher. like I said in the beginning, Rancher runs on its very own RKA2 slash K8s or K3s cluster. And from my experience, just deal with this. Like, just like don't try to fit everything in a single cluster. Like, just roll with that. And if you go to the local, like to this cluster you have installed locally, you can actually see. Sorry, you can actually see some statistics, like some basic metrics, like how is it like used, CPU, memory, or capacity wise, right? But yeah, now that we'll go to our home, we can see that we can manage, import existing, or we can create a cluster. And this is another thing that I wanted to show you in this tutorial. You can see that multiple choices you can have here, but we'll like go and create our own private cluster. So we'll choose the custom option, and we'll give it a name, and we'll give it a name as to stream cluster, and I will just describe it as a cluster made on a stream. One other thing you want to check and choose is that whether you want that cluster to be RKA2 or K3s. And if you want to practice upgrading your cluster, you can choose a version lower than the latest one, and then you can like practice upgrading the cluster. So from my experience, whenever I was attending this workshop, I'm taking all of those commands from. We did exactly that. We just chose the 1.24 version, and then we upgraded using Rancher this cluster remotely after adding some nodes, and it basically worked flawlessly. But just for now, I don't really want to do with that. I just wanted to show you how to create Rancher and how to add or create a new cluster with it. So I will just leave it with the RKA2 1.25. I won't really change anything. If you have your specific needs, you can choose another container network backend. I'm leaving this with Calico. I'm not messing with any profiles and security options. But one other thing we should check. Okay, here you can basically configure making automatic snapshots and backup of your etcd database. I just wasn't sure if that option was here or was it somewhere else. No, so so that is enough, and we can just create in the bottom right hand corner. So the cluster is created, but it doesn't really exist anywhere. So we'll add our first node, and the first node will be etcd control plane and a worker. And basically Rancher gives us the command that we just have to copy to our bare VM. And one little tip, if you are if your SSL is finicky, or you use the default cert manager deployment with the self-signed certificate, just check the insecure. It basically adds a flag insecure to the curl, so it doesn't try and actually verify whether your certificate is valid. So if you have that, you can click to copy this whole command, and this whole command, after you paste it on a clean VM, will take care of everything. Like, it will install the RKA for you, it will connect it to Rancher, and it would basically perform basic configuration. It will install the networking backend for you, do all of that stuff. I think it will also take care of installing basic egress. So yeah, and we will do just that. So I will switch to my second VM I have prepared, which is K3s test. And I will do the same thing that I have done for my Rancher VM. Hey, nice to see someone popping in. Um, we are pretty much almost done, but still nice to see some people in the chat. Like I was saying, so on our second VM, it's loading slowly. What's loading slowly? The stream is loading slowly, or well, why I will wait for the answer in the chat. I just wanted to say that I will on this another VM I will just configure the Rancher user. So, I think I got disconnected meanwhile. So once again, I got disconnected at the timeout. So sudo su and was it add user? Yes, it was add user. Add user. Maybe not Rancher. The stream you had to wait 30 seconds for it to load. That's interesting. I think I have chosen ultra low latency and I have a pretty decent connection. Yeah, I think I would also blame YouTube for that because I have pretty decent fiber connection. Huh, weird. Good to know though. So what should I call my user? I think I might just call it RK2 since I'm installing the RK2 cluster. And as previously, I don't really want to supply it with any password. And we'll do it just like that. Okay, and now I also have to add it to sudo and make it possible to execute sudo without a password. So I will go to vim etc sudoers.d and I will just do 87 rka2. And for my rka2 user, I will do all equals all no pass wd colon all. Okay, and now check rka2 and can it go to the root without password? Yes, it can. Perfect. So now that we have it, we can just go and copy this command once again. Make sure that if you are not using like fully verifiable certificates, just tick the insecure and make sure that all of those are also ticked, all of those roles. Copy this, go back to here, paste it, hit enter and hope for all the best. So here it actually got done pretty quickly. Oh shit, man, New Zealand, like it's nice to have somebody from the Kiwi land. Like that's so cool though. We actually used to run, I think, like my university used to do an experiment where we were running like InfiniBand connection from the Warsaw to Australia, which is, I know it's not New Zealand, but yeah, like, you know, it's still like that's that amount of distance. That you made me remember that. One little thing I also wanted to say that it is that even though we just like basically had that command execute flawlessly, we can still see within the Rancher dashboard that I went to by clicking home that that cluster is updating, which basically means that it's still being created. Yeah, it's a bit down under. It's still like a bit more far away from me. Isn't like many kudos from New Zealand? He's like a whole different type of YouTuber though. So now, if you are doing this, you still need to wait for the cluster to actually deploy. This also should not take more than 5 minutes in general. Also, depending on what type of the node you're deploying it to. The quality cutting in and out, is that you or YouTube? I would say this is YouTube. I have a 1 gig fiber connection, and my like all in all, I haven't dropped any frames, and everything says that the signal strength is perfect. But don't worry, if you want to like watch this on later or like from the beginning, this will be available. So don't worry, and I've also tried to make this pretty concise. So this is like not like, you know, a 2-hour worth of a live stream in order to get anything done. I've basically came prepared today. And this is also why I'm not playing any music, so it like won't get claimed. Cool, cool. I mean, it's really interesting. Like, if you think about it, like the way the internet is being done all around the world, the Australia and New Zealand are like this one little special use case. Like where you actually have to just go out of your way to basically reach only that destination, which is also quite fascinating if you think about it. I think that if you... actually, while we are waiting, let's Google fiber connection world map. We should get, and I'm not using Bing because I'm a madman. I'm using Bing because I'm using completely separate browser for my OBS in order to make sure that it won't like jump into my any other browser that I have open. So I'm not crazy, I'm just being extra careful. Anyway, so if we see a fiber map for the world, can I have this like as on a bigger one? Anyway, you can see that, you know, here it's like pretty dense, and it's like basically like it goes to the Singapore, and then to the Australia and New Zealand. It's basically like, you know, less and less, and either less or just slower type of connections. So yeah, I mean, I feel your pain, and you know, I wish you guys had like more of those being patched to you. But yeah, sadly, this is the world we live in. Meanwhile, our cluster got bootstrapped, so I will not really go into much detail today because I haven't like prepared more material, like to basically not make you bored and just roll with the knowledge. But you can check out your cluster dashboard, the one we've just created. If we go to the CLI, we can see that kubectl. Oh, sorry, we do not have kubectl on this node, so we will have to, you would have to install it manually in order to have CLI management access. But I think that if we execute htop, we will see that we have kube API servers and other processes running. It's not that actually that bad. It's just when we connect to something in the US. Yeah, basically, by default, you are I want to say 70 or 100 milliseconds away from anything, so that basically introduces a lot of lag. Yeah. Like just by the sheer distance alone. Okay, so where was I? Let me switch to the browser again. So we can see the cluster statistics, the CPU, reserved use, memory, pods, blah, blah, blah. And we can check what namespaces do we have. One little thing to have in mind is that here you have the namespaces you can see, and you see all the namespaces only after you choose all the namespaces, so you might want to switch to that. I will tell also about that in a minute. I tried setting up Kubernetes using Techno Teams auto setup, but it never worked for me. Yeah, so I don't think I mean, if you link me that tutorial or write it as a comment, maybe I'll, if time allows it, I may check it out on another stream, because I've basically had this idea that I might just, check out the tutorials for fun and verify that they are either good or bad tutorials. So if you link me to that tutorial, I'll try to just check it out from sheer curiosity. But yeah, going back to what I've said, here we have all namespaces chosen, and basically why you can already see that we have some additional namespaces configured, like system default, not in a project, that's not important. But why did I choose all the namespaces? Well, because if you will deploy an app using the Helm App Store, let's call it that, most of the time people are confused that they cannot see the app in their cluster or anywhere, and that is because they don't have all namespaces or the app namespace chosen right here. So that's just a little small thing to have in mind. Well, anyway, like I said, we can check the basic details about our dashboard, like we can also choose install monitoring or add cluster badge. We can browse the nodes that we have in our cluster. We can check our cluster and project members, that those are basically users, and what sort of access they have. We can check events, we can check workloads, we can check, and maybe, so it will be less cluttered if I just choose only user namespaces, because without that you see the whole system. You can, like I showed you just a second before, go to the apps and like install predefined charts. You can also add your own Helm repository. So if there's an app that is not like listed here, you should be able to add its repository if it has one. Like some of the community maintained apps have their custom repositories, and you can add those here. You can go with the service discovery, and that may be useful if you are like configuring some sort of web service, or like, let's say, WordPress instance. Then you might want to dabble with the ingress, and that may be a subject for another tutorial another time. You can check the services. You can check the storage, and you can create persistent storage volumes for your cluster. So if we like just click create, you can see that the plugins that we have here are, NFS, local, host path, Azure, Amazon, whatever you want. I assume that if you are doing this for practice, you will probably want to either go with host path or local. From what I've read, local is preferred, because with host path, you do not really have like a pin that says for the container to always start on the same node in the cluster that it has its persistent stuff on. Like basically host path and local are, I wouldn't say advisable anywhere else other than in a lab or in a learning environment. But I assume that if you are like just trying out and checking out Kubernetes and Rancher, then you will probably go with those. So make sure to read up on those too. One use of this for me would be a Minecraft server minigame project that you can automate game servers for them using a Minecraft mod. Yes, that would be a perfect. That would be a perfect like a use case for a Kubernetes cluster. To dynamically create, manage, and like have a flotilla of those, like let's say Minecraft servers. But yeah, you can create persistent volumes, you can manage storage classes, you can define policies, and here you have more resources, right? So you can like you can configure anything. So I've told you that I will show you how to add additional node, and I will do just that. What is your quality setting set on? I'm 10 seconds behind you, so I don't get crappy audio. You might want to turn up your quality and set your forward about 10 seconds. My man, like I said, I have 1 gigabit fiber connection. I am like running 6,000 kilobits per second, and I have 0 drop frames. So that is probably YouTube trying to transcode my stream and doing a poor job at it. So going back to what I said, I wanted to show you how to add another node to your cluster, and you can do that like by clicking the hamburger menu and choosing cluster management. So here we can like choose any cluster that we have, and like I said, local is for the Rancher, and stream one is that we've created just now. So let's choose the stream one, and we can go to the registration tab. And registration tab will show us the very same, basically not the very same, but like, you know, the command we've seen before when we were bootstrapping the initial node. And now we can choose what are the roles for that node. We can uncheck some stuff that we may not want it to have. And the rule is the same, like, you know, click to copy. If you're not having any secure TLS, then just like, you know, click and secure. It's only affecting the from what I see, it's only affecting the curl, nothing else. And you know, and just go crazy with the VMs, like add more VMs and register more nodes, right? And you can do this for both the cluster you are creating for an actual like jobs, and also for the Rancher cluster. Am I right though? Yes. Yes, no, no, yes. I might be wrong about the Rancher one though. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure one way or another you can add more nodes to, if you want to have Rancher more spread out. Let me just click around a bit more. Just that I may stumble upon that. Provisioning log, conditions, recent events, related resources. Interesting. So it doesn't really have that straightforward command for the stream cluster to just have the registration right here. Interesting. So basically there has to be some other way to add more nodes to the Rancher cluster. But yeah, basically this is the I would say very basic and straightforward way of setting up both Rancher and adding some, and not really adding, and creating some other Kubernetes cluster that is managed by Rancher, which I think is like a very neat combo to have, like Rancher to manage your cluster and have a quick overview, and actually to be able to actually quickly bootstrap those clusters. Since you've mentioned Minecraft, okay, I sometimes those things can appear here. I was wondering if it already has like a Helm chart for Minecraft server ready, which would be interesting. But yeah, I think this is all I wanted to share with you today. Maybe also before I end for tonight, let me just have a quick glance at how much resources I am using up. So I'm basically, for the Rancher server node, I am using up 2.5 gigs of RAM. So I think we should be pretty safe with 4 gigs of RAM for the Rancher server node. And for the worker cluster, the sky is the limit, right? It depends on how many heavy workloads you want to put it on. Oh, yes. So 2 other things that I haven't mentioned at the beginning. First of all, you should probably avoid configuring swap. And if you already have swap configured, you can get rid of that using swap of -a. Because basically if you are like going into the swap territory, then it basically means that you should add more RAM, because it might other way slow down to a crawl. And if you but like this command swap off is only turning it off temporarily, so you might want to edit the etc fs tab, and here just remove the, like this is the line that tells the system where the swap is and how to mount it. So just remove it, and also remove the swap image file. Oh yeah, sudo. We don't need that. And what else I wanted to say, actually? Did I wanted to say anything else? I think I've lost that thought. But yeah, don't use swap. If possible, use separate users, just to keep everything safe, and test your deployments, right? So even if you like do the same setup as I'm doing, make sure that you are aware of how resilient it is. Like, try to reboot it a couple of times, make sure that it like everything comes back online without any problems. Check your backup solutions or backup strategies, especially if you have multi-node, right? Make sure that if you want to deploy some apps that require persistent storage, then think about your persistent storage strategy, whether you need an NFS server that will share the storage to all of the nodes. It also comes with another set of problems, which are pretty much tied to DNFS as a technology, but I really doubt that that everybody will start setting up the Ceph clusters just for storage. But yeah, I think this is all I wanted to share with you today. So if you found that interesting, like, leave a comment, tell me about like what you did with that, or maybe what you would like to see in the future. And as for now, have a good night. And I hope I'll see you next time. Bye.